Everybody, we will reconvene the council meeting, City Futures meeting for Tuesday the 25th of November. We're now up to item 9.5, waste infrastructure, confirmation of strategic direction and next steps. For those who haven't found it, it's on page 136. I'll hand over to Andy and Kaylee. Good afternoon.
Thank you. I'll just do a really quick introduction. Kaylee's here, who can provide much more information and no doubt will answer all your questions. But this report sort of follows on from the broader business case, which has been underway for some time. I guess the idea of the report is to confirm, I guess, the broad and general strategic direction to enable us to go away and do more detailed sort of options assessment, start looking in detail at costs, so that you can actually make some firmer decisions to flow into the next long-term plan for investment in our waste infrastructure network. The report flows from previous reports you've had, including the recent Te Manga report, where decisions were made to I guess consider moving some or all of those activities off that site, depending on what other options are available and what the costs of those options might be. So it relates back to that. The focus of this report is not on the whole waste network. It's really focusing on those public drop-off facilities that complement the curbside service. And there's so it doesn't deal with other aspects around, say, the disposal of that waste to landfill, what that might look like in future, or some of the other activities in the waste network, such as material recycling facilities, so sorting out all that recycling that we create. The key decisions that we're looking for through this report is endorsement around the strategic objectives, which is around fundamentally about reducing waste to landfill, increasing, I guess, resource recovery of what does go through the waste network, and maintaining sort of affordability or value for money over time, so people will continue to use that service rather than perhaps dumping rubbish or that sort of thing. There's also the broad kind of scale and scope and levels of service that we're looking to work to. Of course, none of this is fully locked down, but we need a direction in order to go away and do some further work. We also, I guess one of the key things is around the preferred network configuration, which is looking initially at having one kind of key public drop-off facility on each side of the harbour initially, with potential for that to grow over time. And then, I guess, with that in mind, what the site selection sort of framework and criteria will be, what are the key issues that we'll be looking at in terms of the site or sites for those facilities in the future. So that's like a really brief summary of what the report is. So happy to go straight to questions if you like, or if you would like some more detail in terms of an introduction. As I say, Kaylee can help you out there.
Councillor Morris first with the questions.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Good afternoon. In terms of Table 1 and the criteria there, the minimum must-have in the top left corner being within the existing TCC boundary, that's on page number 142 for my colleagues, Table 1. And just given some of the conversations we've had in the previous session around cross-boundary issues and growth, is that necessarily a bottom line? Because I'm reflecting that it may not be such a good thing to have a waste transfer station within our boundaries, given the proximity to residential areas. So is that necessarily a must-have?
I'll kick things off there. Kaylee can jump in as well if she's got anything to add. But so we were actually talking about this earlier. Perhaps the wording is a little unclear. I guess in terms of geographic coverage, the minimum is that we're providing for the residents of the city. The actual location of the facility potentially could be in Western Bay, particularly if that was like quite close to the TCC boundary. But I guess a preferred approach might be a more sub-regional approach where we're providing facilities that provide for both councils.
So just for clarity, within the existing TCC boundary refers to the servicing people within the existing TCC boundary as opposed to the location of a transfer station.
Yeah, and we can tweak those words to make it a bit more clear.
Councillor Crack.
Thank you. Just considering the wider options, are there communities globally which offer something different? I'm thinking of, do they just rely on skip bins, or do they do something different? But yeah, how widely have you looked in terms of the options to the current facilities that we have?
Is this in relation to how people dispose of their waste? I guess there's different models in different areas, whether they're council owned and operated or privately owned and operated, or but I guess the fundamentals are that people and businesses need somewhere to dispose of their waste. That's pretty much how it works everywhere. Yeah.
So there's no real options to transfer stations. I'm thinking of skip bins and probably on the private sector.
I guess
So understand that there's a new facility going to open up soon by Green Gorilla.
Yeah.
Is that widely, occur around the country where private operators are opening transfer stations? Because that is
Yes.
basically a transfer station, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Originally they were only opening to commercial customers, and then they brought in that to public in the later stages of planning. But essentially all of your commercial players need somewhere to take their skips to consolidate it. It doesn't make sense for them to take individual skips over to, say, landfills in Hampton Downs or whatnot. So it's really, when you think of a transfer station, it's around the consolidation of materials as well as your public drop-off.
So we're not ruling out, we're not suggesting here that we have to have two fully TCC owned and operated facilities. There could be some reliance on the private sector to deliver some of that job, and I think Green Gorilla probably will do some of that, but yeah.
We talked about affordability.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please.
Please, carry on.
Or we're just going with the flow. So if the private sector undertook 100% of the service, the risk there is affordability, because at least we got a, not that it's council controlled, but we've got an operation where the council owns the land and it contracts out the service. So is that a real risk, or is that price suppressed by the consumer's ability to pay? So the question is around affordability. Should we choose to go fully with the private sector?
Yeah, I guess when TCC has some kind of input or strategic influence in transfer stations, it can control costs. For example, our gate fee at Tomonga is $449 per tonne, whereas in Gisborne, that's fully privately owned, is $527 per tonne. There's similar examples in, say, Auckland, where they've got privately owned and operated that are higher than, say, those that are council owned or operated. Yeah.
Arthur Flintoff.
Now, speaking as tangata whenua representative and also acknowledging my Ngā Pōtiki hat, given the connection to Tomonga and to Tahuna o Rangataua, I have a few questions about how this direction will work in practice. First, I have about 4 questions. So. It was 5, I downgraded. Anyway.
So there's 3 and 1 supplementary.
Yeah, that's good. First, on the significance and engagement, the updated report upgraded the decision to a medium significance and the wider waste infrastructure program as high significance. Can you talk us through how impacts on Tomonga, Te Tahuna, Rangataua and Mana Whenua were taken into account in that assessment? And given that, why pre-decision engagement with Mana Whenua has not been built into this particular step?
So I guess there was the previous report around Tamunga and the activities there, which has set out, I guess, a direction in relation to that. This is a broader report around, I guess, the overarching network that will lead to more detailed assessment. And so it's not actually leading, this report is not around making key decisions around what activities council will operate and where they'll be located. So we didn't think of it as being at high significance. Certainly once we start looking at the options and the next stage of the process, there will, engagement with tangata whenua will be a key, including Ngā Pautaki, will be a key component of that.
Second, on the Te Ao Māori outcomes, you've strengthened the Te Ao Māori narrative, acknowledged Ngā Pautaki's role under the Maka, which I acknowledge and appreciate. My question is, how will those Te Ao Māori values, things like the Māori of Te Tai Ao, protection of the cultural landscapes and partnership with mana whenua, actually show up in the benefits and KPIs for the business case rather than just in the narratives?
Yeah, for our, I guess, the evaluation of the site selection and things like that in the next stage, we do have a specific one on cultural sensitivities and impacts. But as part of the previous 16th of September council resolution, it is around working with Ngā Pautaki directly around that establishment of the MOU and identifying, what might be offensive versus not so offensive, and I guess working together to see, what is acceptable on that site, given, like was mentioned, I think in a previous report, the intensity of activity on the land there in Ngā Pautaki. That answers your question?
Yep, that's good. Kind of connected to our third on partnership and governance. From a tangata whenua perspective, partnership is more than being consulted along the way. What governance or co-design role do you envisage for mana whenua, particular Ngā Pautaki around Te Maunga, as you work through the site options and future configuration of what report calls offensive activities?
That's part of the memorandum of understanding that we're working on with Ngā Pautaki at the moment, where we've talked about potential different governance options. But I guess there's also other options that we can explore around, where the sites are located, who owns them or co-owns them, partnership opportunities. It all just depends on what, I guess, model we end up going with or where the sites are located.
My last question.
Sorry.
This is your supplementary question.
Supplementary question. In relation to Te Maunga and Te Tahuna, is the work on Te Maunga being approached mainly as an operational optimisation exercise, or is it intended to be framed as a longer-term restoration of the Tahuna?
Yeah, it's concentrating on the MOU, I guess, is more specifically on the cultural and environmental impacts of the impacts of the operations on the area.
Supplementary. So how would that restoration lens be reflected in the scope of the program?
In terms of the waste-specific project?
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's just looking at the impacts of the individual activities of waste. I mean, we've got the MRF, the material recycling facility, and we've got the transfer station. There was a previous organic processing facility there that's quite close to the harbour. So each of them have, I guess, individual impacts on the environment as well as culturally, whether they're offensive or not. So I guess it's just working to establish what are those impacts and how. I mean, we do have cultural impact assessments on a few of the activities there already that we're taking into consideration, but I guess it's just more discussions to come.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
I'd just like to start by saying thanks for the training you've given us. I think we're all a bit more knowledgeable about the waste streams and what happens to our rubbish as it goes through the system. My question's around resource recovery. At the moment, through the tours we've done and that sort of thing, you can sort of see that there's a value stream starting to appear that the contractor is getting good return on. And then we're sort of left with the tail end of it, having to pay to put that in a landfill somewhere. Do we have part of this, is there a plan that we look at getting some of that value back for ourselves out of that waste stream? Because from what I've seen, there's some big money in that.
Yeah, I guess we are in a long-term contract at the moment, but it's all about, I guess, where do we want to position ourselves in the future for when that contract is over? Are we wanting to continue the same model or be own and operating of transfer stations? There's lots of different opportunities, whether it's transfer stations or material recycling facilities or organics facilities. So that's what the business case is all about, I guess, is identifying where is it best for council to be, I guess, an owner versus just say like the land owner that they lease from, or just leaving it completely to the private sector. But one of the objectives is to, I guess, try to retain some of that value so that we can put that back into the waste stream to offset those costs.
Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, thanks. Really helpful report. My concern is possibly seen initially as a bit of a side issue, but I think it's at the core of the whole thing, which is accessibility. And that is the description of Malemi Street as Western Corridor, whereas AFTI and Smart Growth have talked about Barks Corner as being part of the Central Corridor, and Te Papa spatial plan and other things. And then at the same time, Tamonga is now defined, after having gone into this a bit in the past, it was Eastern Corridor, and now it's defined as Central. And that flows through to option 3, which has Tamonga, Eastern, Western and Northern, but the projected cost only seems to kind of include Tamonga or Eastern, not Tamonga as Central and Eastern. And I'm really struggling to get my head around, because the crucial part of the city that, you know, right now is not being serviced well is Central, which is Utamotai, Te Papa, you could argue out to Greton, Barks Corner, and so on, because they have had a much higher level of service, and it's been for decades, and it's been the worst it's ever been in many ways, apart from obviously the curbside. So I guess I'm just trying to get clarity on that, and looking at where that might lead in terms of the consultation that would take place around that as well.
Yeah, I guess there are some grey areas between those various corridors. I think if we looked at, the Malemi Street area, or say the Tauriko area, we would, look at those equally in terms of serving that part of the city and into Te Papa and those other suburbs, regardless of where the exact boundary is between the Western Corridor and the Central Corridor. I think over, Tamonga as well is right on that boundary of, the established central part of the mount versus out into the Eastern Corridor. So that would be considered alongside other opportunities which are more likely to be a little bit further east, if that answers your question.
Sort of. Supplement. I guess my comment would just be that the more consistency between the different things that TCC and partners are doing, because we want Western Bay to be involved intimately with this. So I just think we should be very, very explicit and not end up in a situation where we kind of, I think what happened with Malemi Street was people didn't realise it was being taken away from them, and not something else wasn't happening until it had already happened. That leads to my other question, or a couple of questions really. I'll load it into one. What will Western Bay be contributing to this piece of work as a percentage or whatever of the cost? And the other part, which I guess is another question, is can we reopen Malemi Street in 2026 for green waste only disposal? Like, I know we've gone through this before, but it's left hanging all the time for our community. So can that actually realistically happen next year? I know there'll be a funding implication, but is that, putting aside the big picture, that's what the urgent request has been from a lot of people in this community?
So with the first question, I guess the involvement in cost to Western Bay, they are part of the project steering group. We have kept this separate because when we're talking about service levels and things like that, we need to be mindful that they have a completely different service to us. So, and also their residents, I guess, are more rurally located, so I guess have different waste habits to, say, people locally. or in TCC. So, but what we've been talking about is them essentially doing a similar internal process that we're doing, but with their councillors. They obviously had to wait for their election to happen as well. So the idea is that we're identifying the needs for the sub-region and identifying different budget requirements so that we can both be putting funding in our long-term plans. So that's the idea. And the answer, I guess the question on Malemi Street, we have been doing some follow-up work to identify the different contamination happening on site at the moment and whether it's within the levels. So we have been looking into that. We had a bit of a stall because of a bit of miscommunication between, I guess, the exceeding limits at Malemi based on what Regional Council wanted versus what we were providing. But that's come back to be okay now, and that's just within the last couple of weeks. So it is something that we're working on, but there's more for us to consider, especially because I guess garden waste doesn't. It needs to be profitable for them to open it just for garden waste. So it adds a whole nother level of dynamics for the site as well. And I guess at the moment it's set up just for commercial, even though it used to be open for the public. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen to, I guess, make it safe again for the public to enter. Also where garden waste was being consolidated at Malemi is now being used to consolidate food scraps. So there's lots of other things happening on the site that we just, but we are working on it. It is part of our plan, as we can, as you can tell from what we're looking at here, but it just unfortunately takes a bit of time.
Any other questions? No? Oh, thank you very much, staff. Thank you, Kaylee. A very well written report, very thorough. Lots of options left there and nothing's going to be left unexplored. We have a set of recommendations. Does anyone wish to move these recommendations? Arthur Flintoff is moving. Anyone wish to second? Councillor Crowther will second. Arthur, do you wish to speak?
Support receiving the report and the confirmation of the stage multi-purpose network as the preferred direction. I also acknowledge the improvements in this version, particularly recognition of Ngā Pōriki as Kaitiaki and Maka, the reference to Tahuna Rangatawa and Te Maunga, and the stronger assessment of significance. From a tangata whenua perspective, my expectation is that the next phase will move beyond narrative and embed Te Ao Māori into the actual benefits, KPIs and governance of this program, including a clear restoration kaupapa for Te Tahuna, meaningful co-design with mana whenua on key decisions, and testing the network for fair access for marae, Papukangi and Māori communities on this basis, and comfortable supporting the recommendations today, and those expectations clearly noted on record.
Yeah, I think this is a really important piece of work. I think we're shaping up an awful lot better than maybe a year ago, the way it initially looked to me. And so I think commend the staff on the work they've done. And I think the strategic objectives are great. The scale and scope has sort of understood, I think, the key things. The service levels will be where it gets to a bit more of a pointy end, and the site selection, obviously, you start to get into all this sort of detailed trade-off discussion. And my own view is that we need to be pushing all the time to have clear, sort of fast-tracked, I don't mean fast-track in the fast-track legislation sense, but fast-tracked options coming to us to actually do a bit more rather than a bit less. Doesn't mean we're all going to agree and sign up to them, but I think in the past, this council has not been quick enough to put in place the waste infrastructure that's important. And if you go back to the, the R's, the roads and the rubbish and stuff, this is an absolute core service. And whilst the curbside has been largely a success, the other piece of it is really, really important, and it has got environmental costs, social costs, all sorts. So we need to get it right, and I would like to think in the term of this council, we have a really clear plan and we start to invest in it in a way that we can actually get things happening, and we get Malemi Street open next year.
Does anyone else wish to speak? No. Just like to reinforce the words of Councillor Crowther that we need to make these sites very accessible. One of the primary aims is to remove cross-town traffic, try and keep it closer to home. I think it'll get better utilisation if people have better, easier access to the sites. What's actually delivered on the site will be determined by the size of the land, piece of land that it's on, and potential cost recovery options that we can get to keep the overall cost of this down. But yes. We have a recommendation. We have a move and a second. All those in favour? Say aye. Against? No, that is carried. Thank you. We now move on to Waters Planning Update. That's on page 167, and we have Renika and Claudia. Good afternoon, Claudia.
Good afternoon. Yeah, just a quick introduction to the paper. So we've got lots of projects on the go, but actually not that much to actually update you on. So there will be coming quite a lot of updates in the first half year of next year. But in regard to water supply, we can report that we updated the cost for the Western Corridor, and the overarching cost came out with 342 million, but that's for the whole build-out, including Joyce and Merrick, etc. And that includes nearly 70% with contingency, etc. So it's we broke it down in different stages, so the planning team now can really utilize that costing information for their future planning. We also concluded looking at the reservoir site at the current Cambridge reservoirs, how much we can actually put on the site, and it's only a 6.8 megaliter reservoir, which is not large enough to cater for all of the needed storage needs we have. So we are continuing to also look at alternative areas there. In regard to wastewater, we have got two large studies ongoing at the moment, the Eastern and the Western Corridor studies, and both of them even look at the potential of an alternative of another treatment plant out east or west. And so both of them will come towards the end of the financial year back to the scoop. And the Carmichael Road projects, where we have got current landowners in our city which are on septic tanks and partly failing, and we have got greenfield infill development there as well. So we are currently working with the developer on this, and we are hoping to report back in the first quarter of next year to this group. And yeah, depending on how the timing is, it might fall into the second quarter, but it's we are working on that. And in regard to stormwater, we only have got at the moment largely planning budget available, so we've got a lot of little projects we are exploring. Yeah, but yeah, it's all work in progress at the moment. Yeah, happy to take questions.
Do we have any questions, Claudia? Well, that is obviously a very thorough... Oh, sorry, Councillor Baker.
Apologies. Just wanting to touch on point 22 there on the water take reconsenting, particularly with Joyce. And Oropi, we had a submission to the annual plan by the local hapu on the whenua associated in and around that area, I believe. And there was some follow-up action on that in relation to this particular consenting. Is there an update on where we're at with those discussions with mana whenua?
Is this referring to the Kaito-Mako area? I'm just not sure about an LTP submission for the water take, which is further up in the Tautau-Wairohi area. And we have got, as part of that project, we are having a working group with local representatives. And yeah, so they are all preparing their CIAs and working on how we could address potential concerns from their end, which might go into maybe consent conditions or the like. So we are currently working with them on that.
Any more questions? No? Thank you very much, Claudia. Very well written. Everyone's obviously understanding it very well. We have a recommendation that the City Future Committee receives a report waters planning update. Do I have someone wishing to move? Deputy Mayor is moving. Councillor Rolleston is seconding. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak? No. No. We have a motion on the floor. All those in favour say aye. Against? That is carried. We now move on to the major events strategy update, page 177 of the report. And Sarah and Gareth. Good afternoon, welcome. The floor is yours.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for your time. I think we'll be quite quick today. This report is tabled for you to receive only, but of course always interested in any feedback you may have. A few years ago, Tauranga City Council started developing a strategy for events, major events in particular. That was back in 2021. We finished some relatively comprehensive community engagement on that strategy, and then at the time the Commission decided we don't need any more strategies, we just want action and investment plans. So we took the strategy sticker off the front of it and put an action investment plan sticker on it, which is fine because it's a good solid piece of work. But the stars have aligned in that we were quite keen to revisit that piece of work, and as recently as a couple of weeks ago you have gifted us a wonderful community outcome that very clearly identifies events as something that you're interested in for our city. So it's serendipitous that we were thinking about revisiting the strategy, and you've given us a really great reason to do so. So what we thought we'd do is chuck a quick report here just to give you that background, let you know that we are going to undertake that work over the next few months, and keen for you guys to be involved. Because we did a lot of work back in 2021, we have a really good basis of understanding of where we're at. I think there's an opportunity to do a bit of a light touch to reconnect with our community and the events industry in particular, some of our key stakeholders, and obviously bring your guys' feedback into what you'd like to see. So yeah, that was it really. Happy to take any questions. The only other thing to note is tomorrow night the Deputy Mayor is hosting an event about events, which in some way is a bit of a kick-off where there's some event professionals in the room, and we'll let them know that this piece of work's coming their way, and we're really keen to have their feedback on board to help shape what an event strategy for our city looks like. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Do you have any questions? It's looking like another extremely well-written report. Sorry, the Deputy Mayor has something to say.
Thank you, and yeah, really pleased to see this report, and I think it's really important that we are engaging. I guess from a there's obviously been a few learnings, and we've got a few events coming. Is there a difference that you're seeing in how communities like Tauranga across New Zealand and across other places are supporting major events? Are there other, I guess, regions or countries or events that are going to influence how we're thinking of it? I know some of the teams just gone to Wollongong in light of us winning the rights to the triathlon series, but really keen we go in like what we've got in Tauranga, but how can we learn from what other countries or regions have done as well to bring that into our strategy?
Yeah, great question. Now, we'll definitely do some research in that regard. My observation over the last 6 to 12 months is that events have started to move from somewhere near the nice-to-have end of the scale to closer to the other end of the scale, especially the direction from central government in terms of putting up a significant amount of money to support the attraction of major events. More and more people are seeing it as a key driver for economic growth and economic activity, let alone social, vibrancy in communities. So I think the scale has changed, like I said, from a point in time where events were seen as a nice to have to them being much more credible as something that drives economic prosperity as well as social prosperity. So we'd definitely look to weave that kind of thinking into a strategy that we had. And yeah, anything else anecdotally that's happening anywhere in New Zealand or around the world that we can draw on to help develop something for Tauranga, we'll take into consideration. The key piece of the puzzle that we're kind of missing at the moment in the Action Investment Plan is a mechanism to help us prioritise. So we have a relatively modest amount of money. How do we make that go as far as humanly possible? We can't be all things to all people. So how do we have a strategy that helps us spend that money in a way that gets best value for money for our ratepayers, builds on what is our unique selling point as a city, and makes people want to come here and spend time here, creates vibrancy, all those kind of things. So that's probably the key thing that we're looking for this strategy to help us deliver.
And how might we help make those decisions? What do we need to be thinking about in terms of sports, music, culture? What might we be doing, thinking about feeding into that? That obviously supports our strategy, but also supports the direction your draft strategy might take.
I think the single best thing we can do is just listen to our community. We'll go out, we'll have those conversations like we're going to start tomorrow night. We'll ask them what they think, and then we'll just reflect that back to you guys, and you'll go, love it, not so much about that one, and having an openness and a willingness to listen to our community and take that on board, and when we finalise the strategy would be wonderful.
Arthur Flintoff.
Can we see a breakdown of that 106 funded events, and that out of the 1.3 million, I think, and I'm particularly interested in what was Māori-led or mana whenua-led versus others, and how that Kaupapa Māori event fund is performing.
Sure, yep, we can provide that information.
Councillor Schuler.
Thanks, guys, for this. Just a quick question. Obviously, you'll go through this process of getting the strategy. Do you see a sort of world where, you're talking about, and it's across the board, limited funding, and the decisions that this table has to make all the time, but we have stated quite clearly our desire to enhance and increase events. So do you see part of a world around that there? What may come out of this is that we may have to put our money where our mouth is and, to get the outcomes that we need for the city?
Never going to say no. I think our first task will be to channel the mayor, do more with what we've already got. That'll definitely be what we look at in the first instance. But if as part of the strategy we identify some things that we clearly want to strive for as a city, well then yes, that might mean that we need to invest more. But I imagine that'll be a decision that we make as part of this journey together.
That was a good answer. Any more? The Mayor?
Yeah, I'm just interested. Obviously, this is a major events strategy. Should we not have a event strategy which encompasses major events?
Yes, I don't think that's decided, to be honest. I think at this stage we offline are calling it a Tauranga event strategy, and you correct, one key part or focus of it would be maybe not necessarily major events, but events of scale and significance. So at this stage, Tauranga event strategy, and let's look at that as part of what we kind of come up with over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking, even from a government's perspective, they're saying, there should be one nationally significant event a month. There should be X amount of regionally significant events a year or a month or whatever, and then the local events there should be happening kind of every day. So it's probably looking at that as a wider context and saying what do we see as our region as what are those big key rocks.
Yeah, I just have one quick comment in relation to paragraphs 22 to 25, consultation and engagement, love it. And in paragraph 24, I'm definitely happy to be involved and join in when required to promote all events as required to put us on the map.
Really appreciate that, and thanks for pointing out paragraph 24. There's actually a mistake in there. The date, the 24th of November, is actually the 26th of November. That event came about relatively short notice, so I know there's not many people around the table that can make it tomorrow night, but very much appreciate the offer, and will absolutely be leaning on all of you as and when available to come and support us with community engagement on the strategy development. Thank you.
Thank you. And the Deputy Mayor has offered to move this, and Councillor Baker is seconding. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak?
Certainly do. No, I just think congratulations to the team for putting this together. It's something that I think around our table we are energised about, and to the Mayor's comment, is it a major event fund or just an event fund? To a small entity, what for Tauranga might be a minor event might be major for them. So I think it's something that we should incorporate that. I think in terms of the event tomorrow, I just want to make a comment to Arthur and Hemi and Hotapu. We have currently invited people that I've known in this space, and so we haven't, and events that I've been more involved in, so I haven't yet got Māori event holders as such, although Tourism New Zealand's, Tourism Bay of Plenty's coming, but we're intending that there are more events like this. But I think from a Tauranga and regional perspective, or mostly from a Tauranga perspective, I just think it'll be great to have a strategy that we are buying into, that we can be agile about, but that does make a difference for Tauranga and better enables us to meet our vision of being the best city in New Zealand.
Councillor Baker?
No, support what the Deputy Mayor said. Let's get a Warriors game to Tauranga.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Crowther?
Very happy to see this go, and glad that Gareth kept the little sticker which had strategy rather than just the AIP stickers. One little suggestion for staff, and it's just a little bit of a trigger for me, is when it says reduce emissions and then something like the framework that you're operating under considers emissions and considers sustainable travel arrangements, the verb would be much better if it could be the same verb. Like if we're trying to reduce emissions, put reduce and flow that through the event strategy, so that what ends up happening is we have events explicitly, if they want to get funding, I presume this is all about, that they have to meet targets around reducing emissions, because otherwise what will happen is if we're successful in having more events, we'll have lots more emissions as well.
Councillor Rolleston.
Just a quick response to our Deputy Mayor. I think part of the answer might lie in paragraph 9C, Kaupapa Māori Event Fund. I think that would give you a clue to what all the events are, such as the Tauranga Moana Festival and a whole lot of other things that are going on. So if that isn't there tomorrow, the next time it'll be there. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Anyone else wish to speak? No. All those in favour say aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you very much. We now item 9.8, status update of actions from prior city future committee meetings. Christine and Anahena. We're taking it as read. Is there any questions in relation to this updates? If there are no questions, do I have a mover for the Councillor Schuler, second. Councillor Kurak, do you wish to speak? Councillor, no. Anyone else? All those in favour that we accept status updates? Aye. Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to our added item, 9.9, chip seal over asphalt in the 25-26 reseal program. Renica, Mike, Martin and Catherine. Good afternoon. Mike, are you leading off?
Yes.
The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've had quite a lot of discussion in and around this already, so I won't go into the report in great detail. I anticipate there's quite a few questions. I'll just make a couple of quick points, though. Yesterday, Fulton Hogan, our supplier, resurfaced 3 postpart asphalt sites in chip seal. We didn't have any complaints at the time. We had a couple of cars that needed to be moved, which were moved without complaint, and we had no CCMs or any kind of response from the community from the 3 sites that were done yesterday. So I thought that would just to give you the impression of where we're at in the program in terms of the resurfacing work that we're doing out there on the network, which is happening right now. Just to hit a few of the high notes in the paper. So from a roading and a technical perspective, chip seal is the most cost-effective option. That's agreed with our partners, and it represents the value for money option over a whole of knife, and there's quite a lot of analysis and evidence around that. I just wanted to make sure that that was said in this forum, in that there's a body of evidence across New Zealand that supports that as a decision and as a resurfacing technique around this country. It's noisy. It's got loose rocks on it at first, and it is a change for our communities who've had asphalt. And we do recognise that, and I think one of we put our hand up and accept that we've got to change pieces of work here is that we needed to consult earlier to let the community know that they were going to experience a change in what they had before to now. So the reaction that we're seeing from our residents is perfectly natural, and we accept the fact that, you know, at the minimum, we should and will let them know a lot earlier so they can digest, react, talk to us about that plans to change their streets a lot earlier. So we take that on the chin and we're changing our processes around that. The high-level service that may or may not be decided here at the meeting needs closer assessment. And I think I'm just trying to hint at perhaps the weaknesses in our report. We've put this report together at speed, and this is the start of my disclaimers. We are using forecasts on reports and on information that is sometimes older, and we're trying to give you a picture of the scale of change, answer some details, get into the technical, and talk about the general all at once in one paper. So it's quite a difficult paper to write. It could have been 30 pages long. And in fact, a report that tried to attempt to do that and did that in 2020 we've attached as the appendices. And to give you an idea of that report took months to put together because there's a lot of analysis and financial modelling and everything to back it. So we're standing on the shoulders of that report, but they're pretty shaky and loosey-goosey shoulders a little bit at the moment. So I'm feeling uncomfortable with some of the questions you may ask. So I'll probably just leave it there, but one of the other elements of nervousness I think I have sitting here is we've taken a deliverability and an engineering perspective on this. And there are some recommendations that may talk about a policy change or other mechanisms for enabling a level of service change. And I'll just make sure that our policy cousins are protected here, and that's saying that there's probably elements of that policy change and decisions that the policy team will need to think about and give you advice on in future. So now that I've got all my disclaimers out of the way, we'll be happy to take the rest of the report as read and answer questions.
Thank you very much for the report and for the short time frame that it was delivered in. Much appreciated. So Councillor Taylor, I believe, is first off, and then Councillor Morris.
Yeah, thanks for the report. I'm just interested in the history here. This has been going on since 2012. I think it was the first time we did chip over asphalt. Do you want to just give us a bit of a background? I'm surprised that suddenly everyone's saying we didn't know about this, it hasn't been around, it's new to us. How have we gotten to that position when it's been happening for the best part of a decade or more?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and the team will jump in and correct me when I'm needed to be corrected. I think just on reflection is Tauranga's asphalt asset is only coming to a certain stage of its wear and tear and its life about now in 2012. And so the problem hasn't manifested before that in a great way. So, for example, the chip seal over asphalt program last year was about 1.3, 1.5 kilometres. Now it's 13. And that number will grow over time. So it is an issue that will increasingly be on the minds of our residents. And that's the case around the country for all of our growth councils. So it is practice and probably good marketing to make sure that your new subdivisions have great surfaces on the roads. It helps with their construction. So it's advantageous for developers to do that. But that practice started 15, 20, 30 years ago, and now we're starting to see that asset bow wave hit us. It's compounded a little by the fact that investment in our maintenance of our networks has been under delivered, and we're trying to catch up on that. So we've got that bow wave plus a catch up in terms of maintenance and asset renewal that we are working towards. And you know, in terms of the performance of that, our NZTA cousins are quite happy with our performance over the last 4 to 5 years, and in fact the team are doing really well. Our asset programs are getting bigger, they're far more strategic, and the audit results show that on a continuous basis. So the performance of the team is gripping that up. I hope I've answered your question.
Supplementary, very quick.
Supplementary, yes, Councillor.
So probably the main part of my question is, we've had a couple of occasions where the public have come in concerned on this issue. What happened to those inquiries, I suppose, and what was that? We didn't change our position, obviously. What's different this time that will make us change our position?
To the first part of the question, and through you, Mr. Chair, is that the policy was established around what used to be a like-for-like replacement policy or resurfacing policy to a fit-for-purpose. In 2012. It was reaffirmed in 2020 again through that analysis, and as a technical recommendation, staff are not suggesting we change that as a policy, but that's at the behest of council rather than staff.
Through the chair, if I can just add, I think part of your question was trying to gauge what the level of community view were at those times when those two reviews in 2012 and 2020, so Mike wasn't here then. So at both times there was quite a lot of community discussion and debate, and there were strong voices to say we should have asphalt and we shouldn't go back to chip seal, but similarly there were other strong voices saying actually no, we're not prepared to pay the costs. So those, exactly the same conversation that's happening now happened back then, and on both those occasions the governance body of the day made the decision to go with a fit for purpose arrangement, and similar conversations have happened in other parts of New Zealand, and it does sort of raise its head. There was quite a lot of community consultation through, particularly I think the 2021 was, so there was submissions, hearings, all of that was quite a comprehensive process. But we do know that our city has quite a high turnover rate of people coming and going, and so it may well be that some of the people who bought into these locations aren't aware of the council's policy.
Councillor Morris.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and excuse me, colleagues, for the parochial question. I note the trial on different treatments in Brierley and Macmillan Streets in Tauranga. Is there an opportunity, given the diverse soil profile in Papamoa, to extend the trial of such substances to that part of the city?
We've been trialling different products over the last 2 or 3 years and trialling them in different locations across the city, including in Papamoa. So there have been some trials already out there. We're trying to pick sites that have different characteristics so that we can test the performance in different environments. And that's really our driver, and that's what's determined the sites that we've picked.
Yes, Councillor, you may have a supplementary.
Thank you. Yeah, very briefly, are there any more trial sites planned?
We've been trialling different products over successive years, and this year we're trialling another product called SteelGuard, and that's slightly different to the ones that you'd have seen on the road over the last couple of years, and we have quite a number of sites that we're trialling that product on across the city again this year.
Arthur?
No additional, no.
So what I've heard is that there's some neighbourhoods that want to put this alternative seal on top rather than this chip seal. And these are low-speed, short streets. Would I be correct in thinking actually this is more an amenity thing than it is a safety or issue?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's not a safety issue as such, and in particular, the kind of safety we think about is all modes. So chip seal performs perfectly adequately in all of those environments. In terms of the feedback we've got and heard from residents, they do like the asphalt roads. They do talk about it's better for their community. Some of the feedback we've had around sort of property values and how they feel and think about their neighbourhood. So I think from that we can conclude that is what they think. So the answer is yes. It's a long way of saying yes.
Councillor Schuller?
Thanks, guys, for the report. Just for clarity on some of the numbers, and just, I suppose, to understand the scale and the scope of what we're looking at as we head into an annual plan process. So paragraph 14, if we stayed like for like on everything, so we chose to keep asphalt, and chip seal, their report says, based on the 2020 paper, that we're looking at another 7.3 million a year. Is that right?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes. So these are the numbers that we would go away and check. But it's to give you scale. Our current program is about $9 million. So that is almost doubling our current level of program. So that's on top. It may be incorrect exactly, but at the same time, it represents a significant increase on the year-on-year cost for that.
And then thanks for that. And then if further down in paragraph 36, I suppose you're referring to the concept, if we wanted to go equity right across the city and we chose to go level of a service that was asphalt everywhere, then that program increases by 15.3 million. That's correct too, eh?
Again, through Mr. Chair, I think it's 15.7 in the report.
Oh,
but at the same time,
with a grain of salt.
Numbers. But again, that's a representation of the scale of change. So 15 million more than the 9, so that almost triples. And I think the report that's included in the appendices used values and numbers of that time before the significant inflationary period that we've gone through. So, but you can get a sense of the scale of change that was considered in that report. And that report was based on a far deeper and more financial modelling and analysis at the time.
Thanks.
Councillor Crowther?
Yeah, I've got a few questions.
You're saying the same as Arthur.
So 16, so I'll only ask 4 of them and 2 will be supplementaries. But okay, so first question is, was the depreciation of the asphalted streets put in by developers, was it done on the asphalt scenario or the chip seal scenario since the policy change? I presume depreciation happened on asphalt up until 2012, was it? My colleagues who were there at the time. But from then onwards, has all the depreciation of those assets been on the basis that you're depreciating only the equivalent chip seal replacement?
So again, like Mike, I've got a few disclaimers. I've just come into the transport activity from Waters. So I'm just speaking from my experience in council since last 7-8 years. These would have been vested assets, and the vested assets, like other assets, we revalue them every 3 years. And basically, whatever the values were, we depreciate it based on the asset conditions, and that's how the depreciation usually works. So that's probably the best answer I could give you.
So to be clear, that's like in accounting language, that's diminishing value rather than straight line or anything like that. So basically it would end up being worth next to nothing because you know it's going to wear out. Right, okay. Second question is, do the costs that we've got for chip seal over asphalt, like that's clear that that's not doing the repavement from all the information I've seen, so it's just applying it without redoing the pavement layer. But are the asphalt costs also for just asphalting over like a top coat, or do they involve either some or all of the pavement layer being redone?
So where a street is already in asphalt, it's got the underlying pavement strength for that asphalt to be replaced with asphalt. Most of our streets that are in chip seal, though, have lighter pavements, and they have to be reconstructed if they are to be replaced in asphalt.
For anyone listening, that would be this. For instance, if you take a controversial example like Papamoa Beach Road, which is chip seal, you would need to do the pavement to be able to asphalt it. But an existing asphalted street in Papamoa or wherever, that could have asphalt put on top without redoing the pavement if the pavement was assessed as being intact.
That's correct.
Yep.
And normally we mill out the existing asphalt and replace it.
And then my last question, I think I can get away with, is you said, Mike, that Carmichael Road used a product, one of the alternative products, because larger chip was used, and so therefore it was applied, and it's got a better finish now. So my question is around Millers Road and whether that same product was used or whether that is asphalt, because people in the community are talking about it as asphalt, and it's certainly got the perception, but the options, because I'm a bit of a novice around, I've noticed these surfaces more in the last few weeks than ever, but is it asphalt, is it an alternative, or is it just fine chip seal? Because the change in that road was immense, and it's not a high volume street compared to some of the Papamoa ones that are controversial. So I'm questioning, why is that? It's my neck of the woods, so I like it if I go on a bike or a bus or a car, but why did it get such a great surface and some of these other ones allegedly not have as good a surface?
All the new products that we're trialling are kind of just like paints, and their real purpose is to be applied to an existing asphalt to rejuvenate it and extend its life. And we're trialling them to try and push them beyond that scope to see if we can use them as an alternative to chip sealing.
Through you, Mr. And just to add to that, in terms of these trial sites, it's a bit like cheap paint. We've got to be careful how much we use it and where we want to use it. We need to know that that's going to be value for money over the longer term. So hence why we're sort of trialling them in different conditions. So they appear to be useful, and they appear to be an option to use as a middle ground. But until we're sure, we've got to sort of strike that balance between getting that value for money question answered and then the ability to sort of soften the effects of chip seal.
Just supplementary, because I don't think you can answer the question I'm taking by the sounds of the answer. So can I address the public interest issue, which is, did the fact that we've got a new school on Millers Road, was that a reason for putting in a high quality finish there, whereas streets in Papamoa, which have got higher traffic volumes, has not got the high quality finish?
We'll come back to you with a specific answer. I think there'll be a multiple series of answers to that. in that it's a rehabilitation as well. So it's a bit of a different type of approach. So we'll come back to you on the Millers Road answer, if that's okay.
Councillor Baker.
Hi, kia ora. Thank you for putting this report together in haste, I guess, yeah, to asphalt or not to asphalt, that's the question. I'm pretty clear on my position on it all, but thinking future focusing is, okay, question one, does asphalt materially impact the value of a house in a new development? Has anyone ever been able to determine that? Do we know that that's a thing?
Oh, Mr. Chair, I can't answer that. All I know is that from a rating perspective, it's a great product.
We do know that overall community amenity affects, because, you know, some areas are higher socioeconomic and will have a higher value, but the role that the road seal plays in that overall amenity and therefore the impact on house price, no, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't. Okay, we don't know, which is good to know. That's a good starting point, because through the IDCs then we can impact future developments to not have asphalt, right? Or is that just suicide? He's laughing over here, so is that not a good thing? Or?
I'm just looking forward to the discussions.
So we have looked at that. It is difficult to set a maximum level of service. So the IDC sets a minimum level of service, and then we be really clear what level of service council will renew that. That's always been our position. And so saying to a developer that you can't put in a higher level of service if they want to bear that cost, we've never specified that. It's the minimum. But being clear what council will do when that asset gets to the end of its life as to whether it will renew like for like or provide a different solution. We're clear about that, and that our policy has always been very clear. Yep.
And final question just on that. So when someone buys a house and they've got an asphalt road, when they buy it, are they informed that in X years this road is going to be chip sealed? We're not going to asphalt it? That type of informing? Do we do that currently?
So that's not information that would normally be on the LIM, as I understand it, because the LIM more relates specifically to the property itself, and the road is public land outside of the property boundary. So unlikely. They could find out that information if they sought it, but it wouldn't be normally provided.
Yeah, I mean, lastly, in closing feedback, thank you, is that considering this is a topical thing that came up in 2012 and again in 2020, this year, it'll probably happen into the future, there's somewhere in and amongst the comms that we provide where that type of information would be helpful for new homeowners, etc., just for future.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, that's exactly where we need to go with this, around more of a strategic comms plan that is cyclical and that we roll out. And we pick up more channels than we have been in the past to get this information to the front. And I think that's something that we can commit to.
Councillor Carrack.
Thank you. If the trials fail, or that surface, whatever the product is, doesn't prove to be a viable option in the longer term, is it simple to then just chip seal over the top of that, or do you have to remove it, or does that, in terms of sticking to the surface and not getting delamination, have you considered that?
Yes, we have, and if they're unsuccessful, then they will be able to be resealed over with a chip seal.
It's a simple task.
It is a simple task, yes.
I've got one from a developer's viewpoint. These large scale section developments, the road's one of the first items that go in, so obviously during the course of development they're going to have high road traffic, heavy industrial vehicles, B trains, so an asphalt road from a developer's perspective is a preferable option because he's got a better road base, more durable service to complete the development in a timely manner. Although it gives him a better amenity product to sell, he chooses asphalt to give him a better construction base. Would you say that's a yes or a no answer?
That's correct. In the early days, developers were using chip seal, and they found that as construction activity occurred, through the development, it often cause damage to the road, and they'd have to either repair it or reseal it, and that's what led to the change to hot mix over time.
So the primary driver for the asphalt and large residential developments is the developer having a surface that he can operate on to develop the whole section and have a surface that he can sell.
Through you, Mr. Chair, developer might consider both the amenity and the practicality.
Councillor Rolleston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This might be for Marty or Christine around a higher level of service. Do we have any other examples or scenarios where this has happened in the district? And I see in the report there's a targeted rate. And what other options, because this is an example and there'll be plenty others where a street says, I want this. What are our, do we have any examples? Obviously it's different when it's a new subdivision and can be incorporated, but where a going concern, I guess, road community wants something a bit higher. Have we got any examples? And if we were to do this, is there other options other than a targeted rate?
The answer is yes. The Lakes, for example, has a higher level of service in terms of its upkeep of parks, berms, reserves, and I believe that was an agreement and a commitment made by the developers at time of subdivision and consenting. So it's easier for that to happen, obviously, right at the very start with a developer. And so when people purchase a property, they know what they're buying and what the cost is that they'll be paying a little bit extra. To do it retrospectively, in my view, would be very, very difficult, because you'd have to have everybody in the street to agree to pay a sum of money over and above that which they're paying now in rates. And I think it would be very unlikely that that would happen, particularly as the streets get larger.
Just related to that, does it have to be a rate?
Well, it could be a cash contribution at time of development or at time of resealing. But Mike, you'd know, but we're talking about several thousands of dollars worth of contribution, I would have thought, in one lump sum up front to pay that.
The only other one that's sort of similar but slightly different was Boscobel, where they had their private water scheme and then they wanted council to take it over to get a higher quality service and a safer water supply. And what the council of the day basically said, it would do it if there was agreement from all the property owners. And I think it got to the point where 99% of the property owners were prepared to pay a lump sum, or some of them chose to pay it over a 3-year period. And on balance, council, I think there was one resident that, for personal and financial reasons, wasn't able to agree, and it did proceed, but it was a very high level of agreement and a relatively short period of time over which they made the payment, and then council agreed to take on the responsibility and the high level of service.
Do we have any more questions of staff? No? Yes, Deputy Mayor?
So just in terms of the questions we've had on amenity and level of service, and I look at it, if probably somebody doesn't know when they buy a house whether the playground in their street's going to be upgraded in the next couple of years, likewise whether their road's going to be upgraded or downgraded. In terms of what we as council have said to you as staff for the last 15 months, value for money, growth pays for growth, everyone pays a fair share, would you feel it's fair that we have a differential level of service across transport in Tauranga? You can say you don't want to answer it, but not fair? Okay, don't answer it. I'll take it back.
Are there any more technical questions for staff? Not philosophical. Thank you very much to staff. Thank you to everyone in the building who's worked feverishly on this over the last week to get this to us. Yeah. We will now open the floor for general discussion amongst councillors. Councillor Schuler, general input.
Yeah, I just asked one question and I'll just follow on. And I suppose that, you know, understand a lot of people's angst and you know, as Councillor Baker said, the sort of the surprise they may get. I suppose just, again, going back to last year's annual plan, $10 million was approximately 3% increase in rates. So a 1% increase in rates is about 3.3 million. So if we are a group that is of the mind of staying or changing back to like for like, so asphalt stays asphalt and chip seal stays chip seal. So this next year we'd be looking at, with no other change, 2.2% rates increase based on last year. And if we wanted to say from now on, so and continuing that the whole city increased level of service, and based on that 15.7 million, those numbers say 4.6%. So it does show the scale of what we're talking about. It's pretty significant.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Just a question. I saw that the Mayor had chucked through a recommendation. Do we need to wait for him to, like, do we want to take 5? Do we know how long it's going to be?
We're having just a general discussion to put some thoughts on the table. Then I'm going to pause the meeting for 5 minutes until the Mayor assures me he'll be back at 2:30. If we are in agreement, I'm happy to pause the meeting now to wait for the Mayor, or if Arthur wishes to say something first. We'll wait.
Aye. Support receiving the report, but I am concerned about the idea that streets can opt up to asphalt via targeted rates. That kind of mechanism tends to favour those with high income, well-organised neighbourhoods and those with the loudest voices, and leaves other parts of the cities, including Māori communities, further behind. These are low-speed, short urban streets. We're mostly talking about amenity expectations, not safety. I see this as an opportunity for the council to avoid creating an entitlement culture, save money, and keep our standards fair and consistent across the network.
Yeah, I support that line of thinking. I'm quite keen to when Māori housing gets off the ground, it's done on a larger scale, so the asphalt becomes more of a necessity for the development as opposed to a nice to have. Councillor Morris or Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Councillor Taylor, who's following speaker, for calming me down yesterday on the issue. Appreciate it. It's an issue which has created passion in our community, and my personal view is that it's right to respond to that. And so I want to thank the staff for preparing this paper at speed and bringing it back to the table so that we are able to make a decision, whatever the decision is today, to respond to that community feedback, and I think that that is a good thing. So I just want to say thank you to the team, to the chair, to the staff for that. I think it's appropriate. As it sits now, and subject to the debate, I will not be able to support B, C and D as they come for the following reasons. I think that we have here an opportunity to respond to our community's concern. There are concerns about equity, and I remember as former chair of the Papamoa Residents Ratepayers Association back in 2012 when I was chairing that esteemed organisation, and the issue came up in the 2012 to 22 LTP. The committee and the meeting could not come to an agreement because we had members in Karewa Parade, which is a beachfront street in Papamoa with chip seal, and residents such as myself further back from the beach with hot mix. And the contention was that from people that have moved into hot mix streets, hey, this is our environment, you know, this is a downgrade. And the contention from people in other parts of the city which have chip seal were, hey, we pay more rates than you, why are we subsidising your level of service? So there's a real equity issue there. But I think that is something that can be overcome. And I can see the Mayor coming in now, which is good. But I think that is something that can be overcome. Now, to my mind, if we were to defer for 12 months the chip seal program over hot mix, I think that would be a sign of good faith to the community. We would need to maintain and repair that asset for the duration of the 12 months to ensure that the underlying pavement is not compromised. But I think that would give us time to consider a way of allowing people to pay for a higher level of service. Because the conversation I hear from the community and the people that have come in is that they don't want something for nothing. That there is a willingness to pay for a retention of a higher level of service. How do we do that? Personal view. The simplest way to do it would be to consult through an annual plan or long-term plan on a targeted rate on streets that are sealed with hot mix but are not eligible because of either vehicles per day or other conditions, not eligible for that extra NZTA subsidy. You could very easily generate a list of streets across the city on that basis, and you could consult in an annual plan with all residents and say, hey, we're looking at a targeted rate on these streets, here's the 100 of them. We get that feedback from the community. Boy, I bet you we'd get a lot of feedback from the community on that. And then we make a decision to impose it on all of those 100 streets or not. But it gives the community the opportunity to say, hey, we're not up for a downgrade. Yes, we're willing to pay. You know, count me in. I think that would be a very easy administrative thing rather than waiting for contributions to come in. We've talked about the Boscobel subdivision where we did get the 99% uptake, which was great. But I think that would be an elegant solution. So that's a reason why I'm unable to support B, C and D. My mother taught me to count before I went to primary school, so I won't be moving an amendment. But should B, C and D fail, I would be prepared to move wording along the lines that we defer the program for 12 months and then consult through a long-term plan or annual plan process on a targeted rate for the affected streets.
Thank you for your input, Councillor Moss. Very thorough. Councillor Taylor.
My first comment relates to what Councillor Schuler was talking about, and that was the potential rates increase, quite significant. And the irony of this is that the meeting we were at in March, I think it was this year, Papamoa ratepayers were telling us how we shouldn't be spending money and how we should be keeping the rates at zero. So quite interesting that it's come from them to up the level of service here. Secondly, I'm very concerned about how this might play out as far as the workload goes. We've got planned construction stuff happening out in the community. There will be a cost to the council if we upset that work program, I believe, and that is going to fall on the ratepayer. Finally, and this is probably a bit more positive than the other two things I've mentioned, there is light on the horizon. These alternative products that we're looking to use, I think, given 2 or 3 years more testing, perhaps those will allow an option that is comparable to chip seal pricing. So I think that's probably where I'd be hanging my hat, is that we get something alternative that will do a job that will satisfy the homeowners and the budget.
Right, welcome back, Mayor. We've just had a general discussion around everyone's ideas of what they're looking to see. With the exception of Councillor Morris's proposal, everyone else has just spoken their mind. Councillor Rolleston, do you have anything?
Yeah, probably picking up from the Deputy Mayor's question that wasn't answered. But just last week we reaffirmed our principles for the LTP with some healthy debate on them, and I think they should guide us into how we make these decisions. So while we're having a discussion today around roads, I think we're having a broader discussion. If a community wants a higher level of service, are we prepared to, I guess, entertain that, and how might we do it? Because I think if we do make these, or this is my view anyway, if we make this decision today or in the very near future, we're setting a precedent. That's my view. around somebody coming and saying, I want this in my street and I can raise the money. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, because we're saying everyone pays a fair share. Value for money, everyone pays a fair share. Growth pays for growth. So if you want something in your, but I dare say we just got to, my view is, in this case, putting aside the timing of when this may actually happen, and we've sort of said maybe we could have done things better and we will do in the future, that whoever has that higher level of service has to pay for it. And we need to look at, that's why I asked the question around what precedent do we have around communities, Boscobel and a few in the lakes, there's a little bit of form there, but they probably are quite unique. One was a new subdivision and one was a specific wastewater, if I remember. So I'm just probably making sure that we stick to our principles that we confirmed, and that we're probably setting a principle here that if we do it, we can't, in my view, we can't turn away another group of ratepayers that come and say, we want this in our community, another higher level of service. And to be fair, while I understand what Arthur was saying, if the people are prepared to pay for it, then that's some ways their choice. But I think we've got a fundamental principle question. Are we going to let ratepayers who want a higher level of service be able to have it? And if they do, my view is they pay. But is it practical going forward? So I just wanted to put those points across to the Chair.
Mayor?
Thank you, and apologies for missing a number of the discussion. Look, I hear what you say, Councillor Rollison, and you know, this community ultimately was built by the community, and I think this is an opportunity for us to allow the community to again take some control if they want to have that, and they want to put some skin in the game and have a way forward. You know, I am very supportive of the chip sealing program. It is delivering value for money. It is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do by our city and by our residents as a whole. You know, but we've heard there's a lot of angst in the community. And one, I would say that chip seal is probably not as bad as everyone thinks that it is. However, life is about choice, and you know, if you're prepared to pay, and you know you want to keep you know, something that is higher than what everyone else in the city has, then I think we need to give an opportunity for people to be able to do that. And yes, it does bring up equity issues. Some people, it's not an easy choice to do, but you know, ultimately, you know, if people are that engaged and you know, set on having something, and they're prepared to pay for it, then who are we to say no, that is not an option? So, you know, I guess where I'm going with this is I'm 100% behind our staff and the direction they're going around chip sealing asphalt roads that don't have high traffic volumes. That is the right thing to do by our people, and I'm 100% on board. But I think we need to, for those communities that are prepared to put their you know, hands in their pockets, and I know you know, in the olden days you used to have a lot of private roads where people maintained their own, and I think again, you know, obviously we can't make those decisions now, but you know, that's probably an option we should look at. If a community is prepared to take charge and look after their own street and you know, the upkeep and everything that's required, then again, who are we to say that's not a good idea? So you know, those are the options we should look at. I think we should look at it in the, you know, putting a policy in place where people can pay for an additional level of service than what we can deliver as council. That's not going to happen for 2 years. So what the tricky bit is how do we solve from now until we put a policy in place, and how we go about that? You know, from a practical perspective, you know, we don't have an option to put in targeted rates, I don't believe, you know, until we've got a policy and a way to do that. I also think that's quite tricky from an administrative point of view. You know, we've got to have, you know, we've got to then, you know, put for 50 people a targeted rate, or 23 on that street, and that one's that, and that one's that. That's, to me, the administration is too hard. So I think the interim is, you know, the communities have to stump up with the capital cost, you know, and we can certainly work with them to find ways. So I don't say sort of carte blanche, we're gonna stop the chip sealing over asphalt program. That, to me, needs to continue. We know there's significant costs in taking that out, but communities that are prepared to look at an option, then it's an ad hoc sort of community by community that we're prepared to look at a pause. But you know, anything that, like, we've got a few that are imminent, you know, those ones we can look at potentially looking at a delay if they show a want to look at an option. But you know, let's say if you're getting done in February, we'll set some clear expectations that you've got to come back to us, for example, you know, 2 weeks before, or a month before, whatever. We'll get our transport team to do it, and you've got to have a funding agreement in place by that moment. Otherwise, your street's getting chip sealed. And you know, that puts the onus back. If you want that choice, then you know, get your community together and find a way to meet the cost between what it would cost our council and our ratepayer normally, because that's a cost we've already committed to, and the difference between that and what you'd be paying to reseal it in asphalt. So that's where I guess my direction is, and I've got some wording I'd be happy to look to move really that deals with the long-term plan. The wording I don't have is how we deal.
Excuse me, Mayor?
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of ideas around how we put the recommendations forward, I was going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We will then formulate a set of recommendations that we're all happy with.
Yeah.
Then we'll reconvene the meeting and we will discuss those.
Okay.
If everyone's table happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, I now adjourn the City Future meeting for 5 minutes. 10 minutes, you reckon? Jeepers, you want generous people. Is it off? Question from Councillor.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I won't speak now. I'll wait till the motion's put. But just for clarity, can I just ask if what the Mayor is looking at, whether in terms of timeframes, as Mahe said, that he's sort of seeing it as a long-term plan type discussion, and Councillor Morris, you had, in signalling that you won't put an amendment, you also signalled that were things different, you would put an amendment. And I'm just thinking, would that amendment be, you said annual plan or long-term plan? So does this meet your preferred option that you were looking for, which is to have something put into either an annual or long-term plan?
I think there's potentially a difference of opinion between myself and council staff about how long it would take to implement a targeted rate. I don't want to suggest what the staff position is, but I suggest that it may be LTP. And my view is that if the council saw that as a priority, that if it was a priority, it would be done within the annual plan, given the agility and the quality and awesomeness of our team.
I think in response to that, a targeted rate may be something that you wish to discuss more widely across the city through the long-term plan process. If you took another approach, though, it could be consulted through the annual plan process. It would require a change to the rating process, which requires public consultation, which we do through an annual plan process.
Just on that, is it, oh, sorry, I have to ask you. Can I speak?
I'm trying to adjourn this so we
Okay.
can wordsmith the Mayor's proposal, and then we can come back and discuss it some further. Otherwise, we're not moving anywhere in the forward direction. So can we adjourn? I believe the time limit was